You probably know your attachment style, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can probably name your trauma responses. You might even be able to pinpoint the exact childhood moment that, you know, made you afraid of confrontation.
Oh, absolutely. People are very educated on this stuff now.
Right. But what if I told you that being hyper-aware of your mental health might actually be the exact thing keeping you from healing?
Yeah, it's a really uncomfortable thought, but it trips up incredibly smart, incredibly insightful people every single day.
It really does. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking into some really fascinating excerpts today from a Mental Health Week in Review. It's by Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
And the piece is titled The Vehicle of Healing, Transforming Insight into Action.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the profound difference between knowing exactly what's wrong with you and, well, actually fixing it.
Right, because hyper self-awareness can sometimes be a complete trap.
It can. Okay, let's
Yeah.
unpack this. Because reading through these sources, an analogy immediately popped into my head.
Okay, let's hear it.
Having brilliant insight into your mental health is basically like staring at a highly detailed Google map.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like, you know exactly where you are. You know the destination. You see the traffic. You see the alternate routes. But you are still sitting in your driveway with the engine completely off.
That visual is just, it captures the core message of the CHC text perfectly. In fact, they define the dynamic in those exact terms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they explicitly say insight is in the map, while therapy and healing are the vehicle.
The vehicle. That makes so much sense.
Because people are spending sometimes decades, just staring at the map. They're analyzing the terrain, but therapy is the vehicle that actually gets you out of the driveway.
Which brings us to a massive paradox that the text highlights. Mental health concerns are rarely solved by understanding alone.
No, they almost never are.
But the people who are the most insightful about their struggles, like the ones who perfectly articulate their patterns and name their triggers.
They're frequently the ones who run the longest without ever getting into the vehicle.
Exactly. They don't go to therapy because they falsely assume their profound understanding is just going to naturally translate into change.
I see this constantly. You gain a piece of vocabulary. Let's say you realize you push people away because you're terrified of abandonment.
Okay, yeah.
The moment you make that connection, your brain actually rewards you with a massive rush of dopamine.
Wait. Let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
If you can perfectly name your trigger and articulate your pattern, I mean, shouldn't that be half the battle? Why does it just stop working?
Well, what's fascinating here is how our brain processes threats. To your brain, an unnamed, misunderstood psychological pattern is a chaotic threat.
Oh, because it's unknown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you finally categorize it, when you say, oh, this is an avoidant attachment style, your brain feels like it has solved a puzzle.
Right.
It neutralized the unknown. That dopamine hit feels incredibly productive.
It feels like a revelation.
It does, but the trap is that the brain equates this intellectual analysis with actual physical action.
Oh, wow.
You trick yourself into thinking you've done the work, when all you've really done is, like you said, printed out the itinerary.
So you're just sitting in the driveway, feeling incredibly accomplished because you know the route, but you haven't actually put the car in drive.
Precisely. Insight tells you what is happening. Healing changes what is happening.
Insight tells you what is happening. Healing changes what is happening.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
And the source material gets into the mechanical reasons why the map is never enough on its own. They note that change doesn't happen without skilled relational and somatic intervention.
Okay, let's break that down, because those are pretty heavy clinical terms, relational and somatic.
Yeah, they are.
If I'm sitting in my room reading like 10 books on psychology, why isn't that enough?
Well, because human nervous systems are just not designed to heal in isolation. Relational means the healing has to happen in connection with another person.
Because our deepest wounds usually happen in relationships, right?
Exactly. Whether it's with parents or partners or peers, you cannot rewire a relational wound entirely by yourself.
That makes total sense.
You need a safe, regulated presence, like a trained clinician, to actually experience a new kind of relational dynamic.
And somatic. What does that refer to here?
Somatic refers to the body. You can intellectually understand a trigger in your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical thinking part of your brain.
Right, the analyzer.
Yeah. But your nervous system is still operating on the old alarm system. It's stored in the body.
The body keeps the score, essentially.
It absolutely does. You have to adjust the body's physiological response, not just the mind's intellectual understanding of it.
Okay, but if our brain is tricking us with that dopamine hit, if we think we're driving when we're really just parked in the driveway, how do we figure out that we are stuck?
That's the million-dollar question.
What's the red flag that the map isn't working? Because if we aren't using the vehicle of therapy, our body and mind are going to warn us
So they will definitely try to warn us, yes.
And the CHC text provides a list of these really sneaky practical warning signs. And the first one is just so universally relatable.
Oh, the dishwasher.
Yes. Crying over the dishwasher isn't actually about the dishwasher.
The dishwasher is just the tipping point.
I think we've all been there. You drop a spoon or the Wi-Fi cuts out for literally 5 seconds and you completely melt down.
Yeah, it happens to everyone.
But why does our body react to a dropped spoon like it's a life or death emergency?
Well, this goes back to what we were just talking about with somatic intervention. Your nervous system has this window of tolerance.
Okay.
When you are outside of that window, when your baseline stress level is already maxed out from, say, unhealed trauma or work stress or financial anxiety.
You just have no capacity left.
Exactly. Your system has 0 shock absorbers left.
Yeah.
The text emphasizes that nervous system regulation isn't just some trendy buzzword on social media.
Right.
Your body is actively trying to communicate with you. That massive emotional reaction to a minor inconvenience, that's your nervous system screaming that it cannot hold one more drop of water without overflowing.
Wow. And here's where it gets really interesting. Another warning sign they list is high-functioning burnout.
Yeah, that's a big one.
The text points out that casually saying, "I'm fine," all the time can actually be a massive warning sign.
It really can.
And reading this, it reminded me of a smartphone. You know when you look at the screen and the battery icon says 100%.
Oh,
The
yeah.
phone looks completely fine. But the second you open a single app, like say emptying the dishwasher, the phone immediately black screens and shuts down completely.
That is such a good analogy. The "I'm fine" is just the 100% battery icon you are projecting to the world.
Exactly.
It's a performance of competence. But the internal somatic battery is utterly degraded.
And we have to ask ourselves, why is the battery draining so fast when it doesn't look like we're doing anything strenuous?
Right. And the CHC text connects this directly to another behavior we constantly misinterpret, which is people-pleasing.
Oh man, this line in the source is going to hit you right between the eyes if you're listening. It states, people-pleasing isn't being nice. It's an ingrained survival strategy.
It forces a complete reframing of the behavior because society rewards people-pleasing.
We praise it. We call it being easygoing or being a team player.
We call them deeply empathetic people. But biologically, what is actually happening is very different.
What has happened?
Biologically, it's a fawn response. We all know fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Yeah.
Well, fawn is the 4th trauma response. It is a deeply ingrained survival strategy designed to preemptively pacify threats.
Oh, I see.
If you grew up in a volatile environment, your brain learned that the only way to stay physically or emotionally safe was to just keep the volatile person happy.
So connecting this back to the smartphone battery analogy, people-pleasing isn't just a harmless personality trait.
Not at all.
It's like having 50 apps running in the background of your phone at all times.
That is the perfect way to look at it. Consciously, you think you're just sitting in a meeting or having dinner with your family.
But subconsciously,
Subconsciously, your nervous system is working overtime. It is tracking the mood of your spouse, analyzing the tone of your boss's email.
monitoring everyone's body language.
Exactly. And adjusting your own behavior to ensure nobody gets upset. That background processing requires an enormous amount of somatic energy.
It just drains the battery to zero.
Instantly.
And this brings us right back to why we need the vehicle of therapy, specifically somatic intervention.
Yes, exactly.
Because you can't just logically tell a people pleaser, hey, just stop being so nice, set some boundaries.
No, because their nervous system genuinely believes that if they stop pacifying everyone, they will not survive.
Wow. So you're asking them to drop their armor in a world their body still perceives as an active war zone.
Exactly. That logical advice, the map, is totally useless if the body is terrified. You need clinical support to regulate those hidden physiological alarms so the body actually feels safe enough to put the armor down.
Now, if you were sitting there right now realizing you just cried over the dishwasher and you are recognizing that your chronic people-pleasing is actually a desperate survival tactic.
It can be a lot to take in.
It is. It's so easy to look at that map and feel completely overwhelmed. You might have even categorized your attachment style as severely problematic.
People start to feel like they are permanently flawed.
Yeah, they do.
And that profound sense of permanent brokenness is exactly the quicksand that keeps people stuck in the driveway.
Because they think, well, my nervous system is wired this way, my attachment style is anxious, this is just who I am.
Right.
So what does this all mean for the listener who has diagnosed themselves with a quote-unquote bad attachment style and thinks they're broken for life?
Well, the text gives us a massive lifeline here.
Yeah, it does.
It explicitly states attachment styles aren't fixed. They shift with practice.
They shift with practice.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that phrase speaks directly to the science of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to fundamentally rewire itself.
So it's not a life sentence.
No, an attachment style isn't written into your DNA. It is simply a set of neural pathways that were formed by your past experiences.
They're essentially just habits of the nervous system.
Exactly that. Understanding your attachment style, knowing that you have a tendency to be anxious or avoidant, that is the insight.
That's the map.
Right. But the practice required to shift it, that is the healing. That is the vehicle.
You have to actually get in the car and drive the new route over and over until the dirt road becomes a paved highway.
It takes time and it takes repetition.
It does. And speaking of things that feel totally unshiftable, the text mentioned something else that really stood out. Difficulty focusing.
Oh, yes.
Apparently, this is the single most Googled mental health question out there.
Which should really tell you everything you need to know about how universal this struggle is.
Truly. If you are struggling to concentrate, you are in very crowded company.
Very crowded.
But why focus? Of all mental health symptoms, why is focus the thing millions of people are desperately Googling at 2 in the morning?
Well, this raises an important question about how our modern environment interacts with our ancient biology.
Yep.
Think about what focus actually requires. It requires your brain to filter out your surroundings and hone in on one specific task.
Right, tuning everything else out.
But if your nervous system is dysregulated, if it is constantly scanning the room for threats, if it's dealing with high-functioning burnout.
Or exhausted from that fawn response we talked about.
Exactly. If that's happening, it literally does not have the biological resources to focus on a spreadsheet or read a textbook.
Because to the brain, surviving the perceived threat is a million times more important than finishing a work email.
Exactly. Focus is a luxury of a regulated nervous system.
Wow. Focus is a luxury of a regulated nervous system. That completely shifts the perspective.
It really takes the shame out of it, doesn't it?
It does. You aren't lazy. You aren't fundamentally broken. Your body is just currently prioritizing survival over productivity.
And again, you cannot life hack your way out of that biological reality with, a new planner or a time blocking technique.
Or some fancy productivity app.
Right. You need the vehicle of healing to tell your nervous system that it is safe enough to focus again.
Which brings us to the most practical part of our deep dive.
The logistics.
Yes. We have established that the vehicle is absolutely necessary to shift these patterns, to regulate the nervous system, and to get your focus back. But how do you actually get in the vehicle?
That's historically been the hardest part.
It really is.
Yeah.
Deciding you want mental health help is often like running full speed into a brick wall.
The barriers to entry have traditionally been massive. They're deeply discouraging.
Yeah, you finally decide to seek help, and you're met with what? 6-month wait lists?
Hour-long drives to the nearest clinic.
Massive out-of-pocket costs that most people just cannot afford. And what really stood out to me in the source material is how Coping and Healing Counseling, CHC, is actively dismantling those roadblocks.
They really are changing the model.
They aren't just a traditional clinic. They are a 100% telehealth practice, fully HIPAA compliant.
Which is huge for accessibility.
And the most staggering part, they serve all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
The geographic reach of that is vital. Mental health care deserts are a massive problem in this country.
They really are.
If you live in a deeply rural area, your map might tell you that you need therapy, but the physical vehicle literally isn't available in your town.
Right, there's just no clinic nearby.
But serving all 159 counties means whether you're in a high-rise in downtown Atlanta or on a farm in a deeply rural county, you have the exact same access to care.
You don't even have to leave your driveway to get in the vehicle.
Exactly.
And they aren't just matching you with whoever is randomly available. They have built a diverse, culturally competent team of over 15 licensed therapists.
That's a solid team size.
It is. We're talking about licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists.
We cover a lot of ground.
They offer services for individuals, couples, families, and teens, ages 13 and up, and they even offer life coaching.
Well, the emphasis on a culturally competent and diverse team is particularly important based on everything we've discussed today.
How so?
Because healing is relational. If you do not feel understood by your clinician on a fundamental cultural level,
It's going to be hard to open up.
it's very hard to build the psychological safety necessary for that somatic and relational intervention to work.
Right.
Your nervous system just won't relax if it feels like it has to explain its basic existence to the person who is supposed to be helping you.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but it makes total sense. You need to feel implicitly understood.
Absolutely.
And they cover an incredibly wide range of specialties to match whatever you are dealing with. Anxiety, depression, trauma, and PTSD, grief, relationship issues, and chronic stress.
It's very comprehensive.
But even with the right therapist, the timing is usually the deal breaker.
Oh, always.
When you are in crisis, or when you finally hit that wall of high-functioning burnout, you cannot wait 6 months for an intake appointment.
Because the motivation to change is incredibly fragile.
It really is.
If the wait is too long, the person usually just retreats back into the familiar comfort of their unhealed patterns.
Which is why it's incredible that CHC typically offers same-day or next-day scheduling.
Same day or next day, that's amazing.
Yeah, the accessibility here is just on another level. But of course, the biggest elephant in the room is always the cost.
Always. Financial anxiety is a massive trigger for the nervous system, so creating financial accessibility is just as crucial as geographic accessibility.
Absolutely. And the source outlines their cost structure, and it's incredibly approachable. For anyone on Georgia Medicaid, there is a $0 copay.
Wow. $0.
Literally zero. And for other major insurances, they list Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana. The out-of-pocket cost ranges from just $20 to $40 a session.
When you remove the geographic barrier through statewide telehealth, and you remove the time barrier through next-day scheduling,
And the financial barrier through $0 copays.
right, you are essentially walking up to the driveway, opening the car door, and handing the person the keys. The friction is just gone.
It really is. And I love how the text frames all of this at the very end. They explicitly say, if any of this resonates, that's information, not pressure.
I love that phrasing.
Isn't it great? It is incredibly respectful of where you might be at right now. It's your journey.
It's a very trauma-informed way to present the option.
Definitely. But if you are listening to this and you want to look them up, all the contact info is right there in the source material. You can call them at area code 404-832-0102.
Okay.
You can visit them online at sheettherapy.com, or you can email them directly at support@sheettherapy.com.
It perfectly embodies the closing line of their review. The map is in your phone. The vehicle is one phone call away.
It really is that straightforward to start the engine.
It is.
Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We explored how gaining brilliant insight and perfectly articulating your triggers gives you a dopamine rush, but it is not a substitute for actual healing.
No, it's not.
We dug into how crying over dishwashers and chronic people-pleasing are actually your nervous system's desperate alarm bells.
The body's warning signs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we discussed how clinical somatic support from a practice like CHC is the vehicle that actually regulates your system, shifts your attachment style, and moves you forward on your path.
It is ultimately about moving from a state of constant analysis into a state of meaningful action.
Right.
But this raises an important question, something for you to consider long after we wrap up today.
Ooh, I love a good final thought. What is it?
Well, if insight is the map and therapy is the vehicle,
Right?
what happens to your map once you finally arrive at your destination of healing?
Oh, that's interesting.
When you have successfully shifted those attachment styles and your nervous system is finally regulated, do you just throw the old map away?
Or do you have to sit down and draw an entirely new one for the next chapter of your life?
Exactly.
Ah, I love that. A completely blank map, waiting to be filled in with a totally new perspective. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and stay curious. We'll see you next time.